Hello, my name is Olivia, and I want to tell you about my journey. I used to struggle with the American accent. People couldn't always understand me, and sometimes I felt shy speaking out loud. But today, I speak with confidence and sound just like a native speaker. And I didn't do it overnight. I learned the American accent through 5 simple tips. Now I want to share them with you. I started listening. Like a baby, when I first decided to improve my American accent, I didn't know where to begin. I had been speaking English for years, but something always felt missing. My grammar was fine, my vocabulary was growing, and people could understand me most of the time. But I still sounded different. My words came out stiff, my voice didn't flow, and my sentences didn't have that easy musical sound I heard in American movies or YouTube videos. I used to wonder, why can't I sound like that? One day, I was watching a documentary on how babies learn to speak. Something the narrator said caught my attention. Babies don't learn by reading. They learn by listening, again and again. That one sentence stayed in my head for days. I thought about how babies don't use textbooks, they don't ask about grammar rules, and they don't worry about accents. They just hear words all around them and slowly begin to copy them. I realized that maybe I was trying too hard to learn English with my eyes instead of my ears. So I made a new plan. For 1 full month, I would stop worrying about speaking. I would stop writing lists of difficult words. I would stop reading complicated grammar books. Instead, I would do what babies do. I would just listen. That very night, I opened YouTube and searched for American interviews, vlogs, and podcasts. I found a video of a young woman talking about her morning routine. Her voice was soft but full of energy. She said things like, "So I usually wake up around 7 a.m., and then I'll grab some coffee, maybe do a quick stretch." Her words were not only clear, they had a rhythm. They rose and fell like music. I watched her mouth closely. I replayed the video again and again. I didn't write anything down. I didn't pause to translate. I just watched and listened. I started doing this every day. Every morning, while brushing my teeth, I would play a short video. While cooking breakfast, I would turn on a podcast. While walking outside, I would listen to American speakers talking about anything: books, fashion, life stories. It didn't matter what the topic was. What mattered was how they spoke. At first, it felt strange. I didn't understand every single word. Some phrases went by too fast, but I didn't stop. I let the words wash over me like music. I listened for the emotion in their voices, the pauses between their words, the way their tone changed when they were excited or surprised. I started noticing how Americans often join words together. Instead of saying, "Do you want to?" they said, "Do you wanna?" Instead of, "Let me see," they said, "Let me see." These small things were never taught in school, but they made a big difference in how natural someone sounded. After about a week, I noticed something small but powerful. I was beginning to predict how the next word would sound. My ears were getting used to the flow of American speech. I was no longer surprised by fast-talking speakers. I was no longer scared when someone used slang or casual expressions. My brain was starting to connect the sounds, even if I didn't know every word. And more importantly, my mouth wanted to copy them. That's when I added a new habit. Every time I heard a short sentence I liked, I paused the video, played it again, and whispered the words under my breath. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was just trying to feel the shape of the sentence. I noticed how my lips had to move differently, how my tongue had to touch different parts of my mouth. It was like learning how to sing a new song. There was one sentence I remember very clearly. In a vlog, a woman said, "I'm just gonna run to the store real quick." It sounded so fast, so smooth. I repeated it quietly. "I'm just gonna run to the store real quick." I said it 10 times, then 20. At first, it felt awkward, but the more I said it, the more natural it became. This habit became a part of my daily life. I didn't need a big block of time, just a few minutes here and there. On the bus, at the store, while folding laundry, I always had something playing in my ear. My world was filled with American voices, and slowly, my own voice began to change too. A few weeks later, I went to a coffee shop. I ordered a drink and said, "Can I get a medium iced latte, please?" The woman at the counter smiled and said, "Sure thing." Then she asked, "Are you from here?" I was surprised. I shook my head. "No, I'm not." She smiled again. "You sound American." My heart jumped. That was the first time someone had ever said that to me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All I said was, "Thanks." But inside, I was glowing. That small comment gave me the courage to keep going. I knew I wasn't perfect, but something had changed in the way I listened, and it was now changing the way I spoke. After about a month of deep listening, I realized that I had learned a lot without even trying to memorize. I had picked up the natural stress of words. For example, I no longer said comfortable. I started saying comfortable, just like in the videos. I no longer said albuateur. I said wa dare. My ears were now trained to hear these tiny changes, and my tongue was finally able to follow. Sometimes I would even dream in English. Not in full sentences, but in sounds. In voices that sounded American. It felt strange, but also exciting. I felt like I was becoming someone new, not someone fake, but someone more free. There was one day I remember clearly. I was sitting at home, listening to a podcast. The speaker said, "You gotta trust yourself even when you don't feel ready." I paused the podcast. I repeated the sentence out loud. "You gotta trust yourself." I said it again and again. Suddenly, something clicked inside me. I realized that speaking like a native wasn't about learning thousands of rules. It was about feeling the sound in your bones. From that day, I told myself, speak it like you hear it. I stopped translating words in my head. I stopped thinking too much. I just listened, and I let the words come out naturally, just like I had heard them. But the biggest change didn't come from listening to words. It came from listening to the music behind the words. American English has a certain rhythm, a melody, like a song. It's not just about what people say, it's how they say it. The highs, the lows, the speed, the pauses, all of that became part of my new way of listening. And once my ears were fully open to the music of the American accent, I knew I was ready to take the next step, not just to hear the melody, but to copy it. That's when I started focusing on how to copy the music of their speech. Not just the words, but the sound, the feeling, the melody. I learned to copy the melody, not just the words. After a month of listening like a baby, I felt like my ears had opened up in a new way. I could hear the music in American speech, the way voices would rise and fall, the way sentences would move quickly, then slow down at the end. I had always thought learning an accent meant memorizing difficult sounds, but now I knew the truth. It was about rhythm. It was about melody. And once I realized that, my whole journey changed. I remember sitting in my room one evening. My phone was playing a podcast about American life. The host said something simple. So that's when I figured, hey, it's not even worth it. But the way he said it, that was what caught my attention. He didn't say it word by word, like a robot. He didn't say, so that's when I figured. He said it like it was one smooth sound, almost like a wave. So that's when I figured, hey, it's not even worth it. The pitch of his voice went up and down like he was singing. That's when I understood something powerful. Americans don't just speak, they perform. Even in normal, everyday conversation, there's rhythm, flow, music. You can feel it in how they stretch some words, how they shorten others, how they stress one part of a sentence and glide through the rest. I realized I had been copying words, but I had missed the melody. And if I really wanted to sound natural, I had to copy the melody too. So, I made a new plan. Every day, I would choose one short clip, maybe 30 seconds long. Sometimes it was a movie scene. Sometimes it was a TED Talk. Sometimes it was just a YouTuber talking about their day. I would listen to it over and over again. I didn't write anything down. I didn't pause after every word. I didn't even worry about what each word meant. Instead, I listened to the melody. Once I felt that I understood the flow, I would repeat it out loud. At first, I sounded flat. My voice didn't rise in the right places. I didn't pause at the right moments. But I kept trying. I would repeat the same sentence 10, 15, even 20 times. Slowly, I started to match their rhythm. My voice began to sound more like theirs. I wasn't just copying sounds, I was copying emotion. Let me give you a real example. There was one clip from a sitcom where a character said, "You're not serious, right?" The way she said it was full of energy. Her voice started high on "you're," dropped down on "not serious," and then shot back up on "right?" It wasn't just the words. It was the attitude in her voice that made it sound so American. I stood in front of my mirror and practiced that one line for 20 minutes. "You're not serious, right?" I said it over and over again, adjusting my pitch, copying her emotion. After a while, it didn't feel like acting. It felt real. This was when I realized accent is not just about pronunciation. It's about emotion. Americans put feeling into their speech. They don't just say the sentence. They feel the sentence, and that feeling comes out in their melody. I started listening more carefully. I noticed how Americans ask questions with rising pitch at the end. I noticed how they use falling pitch to show confidence or finality. I noticed how sometimes they pause in the middle of a sentence for effect, like, "So, what now?" I noticed how they stretch certain words when they're surprised or sarcastic. Really? All of this was part of the melody. And I began to copy it. I would record myself on my phone. At first, I hated listening to my own voice. It felt weird. But I forced myself to listen. I would play the original clip, then play my recording, back and forth. I listened not just for pronunciation, but for flow. Was my voice going up and down in the same way? Was I matching their speed? Did I sound flat or alive? It wasn't easy. I had to break old habits. In my old way of speaking, every word had the same tone. There was no rhythm, no emotion. It was like playing a song with only one note. But American speech is like jazz, full of surprises, turns, beats, and energy. One day, I found a short monologue from a drama series. The character was angry and emotional. She said, "You think I don't care? You think this doesn't matter to me?" The way she said it gave me goosebumps. Her voice was shaking, not from fear, but from passion. The rhythm of her words was like a storm. I memorized that monologue and performed it in my room like I was on stage. I felt silly at first, but something inside me changed. My voice didn't just repeat the lines, it carried the emotion. And for the first time, I truly sounded American. After that, I started adding acting into my practice. I would pick different emotions, happy, sad, surprised, sarcastic, and say the same sentence in different ways. For example, I can't believe it. When I said it with joy, my voice rose fast. I can't believe it. When I said it with shock, it slowed down and dropped. I can't believe it. When I said it with anger, it was sharp. I can't believe this. That's when I discovered something amazing. Melody is emotion. When you feel the words, the music comes naturally. I also started shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a sentence and speaking at the same time as the speaker. No pausing, no stopping. You try to keep up like a shadow. It was hard at first. My tongue would stumble. My breath would run out. But it was like singing along to a song. You get better with time. I shadowed everything. Interviews, shows, even cartoons. Anything with strong melody. I remember shadowing a clip from a show called Friends. Chandler said, "Could I be wearing any more clothes?" It was funny, but also musical. I repeated it again and again. Could I be wearing any more clothes? The stress was on B. That's what made it funny. That's what gave it life. That's what I wanted in my voice too. After weeks of this practice, I noticed something big. I had started using melody without thinking. When I was ordering food, talking on the phone, or chatting with my American friend Mia, my voice naturally moved in that American rhythm. One day, Mia said to me, "Olivia, your English sounds so natural now. It's like you're not even trying." That made me smile. Because I was trying. But I was trying in a smarter way. I wasn't just copying words. I was copying the music behind them. There were days I felt tired. Days when I doubted myself. Days when I thought, maybe I'll never sound fully natural. But then I would remember how far I had come. From listening like a baby, to speaking with rhythm, to feeling the melody of every sentence, I had made real progress. And it wasn't about being perfect, it was about being real. I started to enjoy speaking. Speaking felt like dancing now. Each sentence had a beat. Each word had a move. I wasn't scared of fast talkers anymore. I wasn't worried about grammar slips. I had confidence, not just in my vocabulary, but in my voice. One weekend, I visited an American family friend for dinner. We were sitting at the table, laughing and talking. Her teenage son turned to me and said, "Wait, you weren't born here? I thought you were from Chicago or something." I laughed. Nope, not even close. But inside, I felt proud. Not because I had tricked someone, but because I had finally found my voice. A voice that sounded like me, but also had the rhythm of American English. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how far I'd come. I still had more to learn. But now I knew what mattered most: listening deeply, feeling the emotion, and copying the melody. That was the secret. And once I had, that melody in my voice, I knew it was time to take the next step. I didn't just want to repeat what others said. I wanted to start thinking in English, feeling comfortable with the accent in my own thoughts. That next step became one of the most powerful habits I ever formed. I practiced the hard sounds. Every day, after I started copying the melody and rhythm of American speech, I felt more confident. My sentences flowed better. I could speak in a way that didn't sound flat or stiff. It felt like I had music in my voice now. But still, there was something holding me back. I noticed it when I recorded myself, and I noticed it when I spoke with native speakers. Some words just didn't sound right, especially when they had those tough sounds that don't exist in my first language. That's when I knew the next step in my journey. I had to face the hard sounds. At first, I didn't even know which sounds were hard for me. I thought I was saying things correctly. But slowly, through listening closely and comparing my voice with native speakers, I began to hear the small differences that made a big impact. One of the first sounds I struggled with was the R sound. The American R is strong, deep, and made with the tongue pulled back. It's not the soft R I was used to. In my accent, I would say river and right, but the R would be too light or too rolled. Americans say it almost like a growl. Right, river. It was hard to do at first. My mouth didn't know how to shape the sound. I sounded like I was mumbling or even growling by mistake, but instead of giving up, I made a plan. I picked 5 words each day with the R sound. I practiced them again and again. Red, right, ready, road, real. I said them slowly, then fast, then in a sentence. I stood in front of the mirror, watching my mouth. I looked funny, but I didn't care. I was training my muscles, just like learning to play an instrument. Next came the TH sound, like in think and this. This one was really hard. In my language, we don't have a sound where the tongue sticks out between the teeth. At first, I felt silly doing it. I felt like a child learning to speak again. But I knew this sound was important. If I said think as sink or this as dis, people could misunderstand me. So I practiced every day. I made a list of common words. Thank, think, thing, this, that, those, them. I said them slowly. I touched my tongue gently between my teeth and blew air. I recorded myself. Sometimes it still came out wrong. But I didn't stop. I even practiced while walking around the house. I would walk into the kitchen and say, "This is the sink. That is the fridge." I talked to myself like I was in an English show. One trick that helped me was watching my favorite American actors and paying attention to how they moved their mouths. I slowed down the video and watched how they made the sounds. I copied them. I paused the scene, repeated the word, checked myself in the mirror, and tried again. Slowly, my tongue started to move the right way. It took time, but it worked. Another difficult sound for me was the L. It seems easy, but making a clear, light American L took effort. At the beginning of words like, love, learn, I had to lift my tongue to the roof of my mouth just behind my teeth. But in my old speech habit, I didn't always do that. My L would sound muddy or unclear. So I practiced L sounds too, not just at the beginning of words, but at the end. I practiced words like feel, cool, small. Saying the L at the end was hard. I had to train my tongue to stay strong, not lazy. I would repeat, I feel small. It's cool outside. She will call. I said them so many times that I started dreaming in L sounds. Sometimes, I would write little tongue twisters to challenge myself. One of my favorites was, Larry likes little lemons. I'd repeat it 10 times fast, trying not to mess up. Another one was, 3 thin thieves thought Thursday was thrilling. That helped me with both the TH and the L sounds. It made practice fun. I also learned about flap T. It's something many Americans do without thinking. Instead of saying better as better, they say better. The T becomes soft, almost like a fast D. At first, I thought I was hearing things wrong. But after checking with native speakers and watching videos, I realized it was a real thing. So I added flap T to my practice list. I said better, water, city, pretty. I copied the way Americans said them. My tongue learned to tap quickly, lightly. And over time, my words started to sound more natural. When I said, "Can I get a bottle of water?" people understood me right away. No confusion. But one of the hardest things of all was stress. Not emotional stress, but word stress and sentence stress. Americans put stress on certain syllables and words to show meaning. If you stress the wrong part, the meaning can sound off or confusing. For example, saying, "I didn't say you stole the money," means something very different from "I didn't say you stole the money." Just changing the stress changes the feeling. I practiced that sentence in every way, stressing a different word each time. It helped me understand how much power stress has in American speech. To help myself, I started writing down words that sounded wrong when I said them and checked their stress patterns in online dictionaries. Many of them had little marks showing which syllable should be stressed. Like in banana, the stress is on the second part. Ba-na-na, not ba-na-na or ba-na-na. So I repeated them again and again with the correct stress. Also practiced T and D sounds, especially at the ends of words. Sometimes I dropped them without noticing. I would say cold as coal, or hand as han. But dropping the end sounds made my speech sound unfinished. So I focused on finishing every word clearly. Cold, hand, bold, land. I said them slowly, clearly, over and over. Every day, I gave myself a sound to practice. I didn't wait until I had time. I made the time. Sometimes 10 minutes in the morning, sometimes while brushing my teeth, sometimes when walking to class. I treated my mouth like a gym. I trained it to move in new ways. And you know what? After weeks of doing this, my mouth felt stronger. Speaking in American English didn't feel heavy or strange anymore. My lips, my tongue, my jaw, they all moved naturally. I could switch sounds more easily. I could speak faster without losing clarity. I felt free. One thing that helped me a lot was using minimal pairs, words that sound very similar but differ by one sound, like ship and sheep, or bat and bad. I practiced them in front of the mirror. Bat, bad. Bat, bad. I trained my ears to hear the difference and my mouth to make it. These small exercises gave me big results. I also recorded full sentences and asked my American friends to listen. I said things like, "The weather today is better than yesterday." If I made a mistake, they gently corrected me. I didn't feel bad. I felt grateful. Their feedback helped me notice small errors I couldn't hear myself. Sometimes I even used apps to check my pronunciation. I would speak into the app and compare my voice to a native speaker. It wasn't always perfect, but it showed me where to improve. I turned mistakes into goals. Every day I said to myself, "Today, I'll beat one sound." And I did. Over time, my fear of speaking disappeared. I didn't worry about making mistakes. I knew I was improving. I wasn't just saying words anymore. I was speaking with accuracy, emotion, and strength. Then one day, my English teacher stopped me after class. She smiled and said, "Olivia, your pronunciation has really improved. You're hitting all the sounds now, even the tricky ones. Keep doing what you're doing." That made my whole week. Her words were simple, but to me, they were gold. Practicing hard sounds was not fun in the beginning. It felt slow, boring, and even embarrassing. But now I see it clearly. It was the most important part of my journey. Those small sounds were the key to being understood, to sounding natural, to feeling confident. After a while, I didn't need to practice every sound every day. They became part of me. My mouth remembered what to do. My brain trusted my voice. I could focus more on speaking freely, on conversations, ideas, and feelings. I wasn't just trying to speak with an American accent. I had one because I had built it piece by piece, sound by sound, and as I looked back on all the practice, I realized something else. All this work had changed how I thought about English. I was no longer just translating from my first language. I had started to think in English, with the melody, with the rhythm, and now with the sounds. That's when I knew it was time to go deeper. Not just speaking with my mouth, but thinking with my accent, inside my head. Every single day, 4. I talked to myself with an American voice. After I mastered many of the hard sounds in American English, something inside me changed. My mouth finally knew how to move in the right way. My ears knew how to hear the right melody. I could now copy the rhythm, stress the right syllables, and pronounce the tricky sounds like R, TH, and L. People noticed. My teacher noticed. My friends noticed. I was proud. But I also knew I wasn't done yet. In fact, I was about to step into the most personal, strange, and magical part of my journey. It happened one night when I was lying in bed, thinking about my day. I remembered something funny a friend said at school, and I smiled. And then I realized I had repeated her words in my head using her American accent. That made me sit up straight. I thought, wait, did I just think in English? Not just think in English, but think in an American voice? It was small, but it was a turning point for me. I had spent so much time listening, repeating, and practicing out loud. But now, it was happening silently too. That night, I made a new promise to myself. I would stop waiting for other people to talk to me in English. I would start talking to myself. And not just in English, but in my best American accent. I didn't need a teacher, or a class, or even a partner. I had everything I needed inside me. My voice, my ears, and my thoughts. The next morning, I started small. When I got out of bed, I looked in the mirror and said, "Good morning, Olivia. What's the plan today?" I made sure my R in morning sounded strong and my T in what's was soft, like the American flap. T. Then I walked to the bathroom and whispered to myself, "Okay, let's brush our teeth. Don't forget the tongue." Again, I focused on every sound. It wasn't just speaking, it was acting. At first, it felt strange. I laughed at myself. I thought, am I going crazy? But then I thought, no, I'm not crazy. I'm serious. I'm training. Just like an athlete practices without an audience, I was training alone, in silence, and in sound. I talked to myself as if I were a native speaker giving a speech. I put energy in my words. I even changed my facial expressions. Every day, I talked to myself more and more. When I made breakfast, I'd say, "Let's crack 2 eggs, a little salt. Okay, stir it gently. There you go." I talked like I was on a cooking show. When I walked to school, I'd describe the street around me. "That's a red car. That lady is walking her dog. Oh, he's so cute." If I saw someone drop something, I'd say, "Oops, he didn't notice." Sometimes I just told stories to myself. Yesterday at lunch, I sat with Mia. She was talking about her trip to Chicago. It sounded amazing. And the best part? I didn't correct myself in a harsh way. If I made a mistake or used the wrong stress, I'd gently repeat the sentence, like, "She was talking about her trip, not she was talking." Okay, got it. I wasn't just learning to speak English. I was learning to coach myself. Soon, I began to take this self-talk even further. I started giving fake interviews in the mirror. I imagined I was on a TV show. "Hi, Olivia. Can you tell us how you became fluent in American English?" "Yes, thank you for having me." "Well, it all started when I began listening like a baby." I acted it out fully. Smile, posture, hand movements, just like an American speaker. I used expressions I heard in real interviews. That's a great question. Honestly, to be fair, at the end of the day, it felt fun, and it helped me think faster. It made me feel ready for real conversations. And one day, something surprising happened. I was walking to school and thinking about an assignment. I whispered, "I should probably start writing it tonight so I don't get stressed later." And I noticed I didn't choose to speak English. I just did. No translation. No switching. My thoughts had started to live in English. I was now thinking with the accent. Not just about what I was saying, but how I was saying it. My American voice wasn't just something I used in class or around teachers. It had become a part of who I was. A voice I used when talking to others, but also when talking to myself. Sometimes I would even argue with myself in English. "You should do the homework first." "But I'm tired." "Well, if you don't do it now, you'll regret it later." "Okay, fine. But just 20 minutes. I laughed during these little moments. I wasn't alone. I had myself. I also created mini dialogues in my head. Like, if I saw someone holding a cup of coffee, I imagined a conversation. "Hey, is that caramel flavor?" "Yeah, it's my favorite. I should try it sometime." "You totally should. It's sweet, but not too sweet." These imaginary talks helped me feel less nervous in real ones. They prepared me. When someone actually did talk to me, I already had phrases ready. I had rehearsed it in my mind. I used my phone too. I started using voice notes. I'd press record and say something like, "Today is Monday. I'm going to the library after class. I hope it's not too crowded." Then I'd listen to myself. Did I stress Monday right? Did I say crowded clearly? It wasn't perfect, but I kept improving. At night, before sleeping, I'd talk to myself in bed. I'd replay the day in English. I saw Mia at lunch. She told me about her cat. Then in science class, the teacher talked about plants. I understood most of it. I asked one question. It felt good. Sometimes I'd even dream in English. That's when I knew my brain was really changing. This habit became so strong that even when I was alone in public, I whispered to myself in English. Not loudly, just quiet little sentences. Like, okay, bread and milk, that's all I need while walking through the store. Or, let's cross the street now, when waiting at the light. It made me feel like I was always practicing. Some people might think talking to yourself is weird, but I believe it's one of the best ways to learn a language. No one can judge you. You can try any word, any sentence. You can talk slow or fast, silly or serious. You can make mistakes and fix them instantly. You're the teacher and the student at the same time. I also noticed that this habit helped my confidence. Before, I was shy in group talks. I feared making mistakes. But after all, this self-practice, I knew how my voice sounded. I liked how it sounded. When someone asked me a question in class, I didn't freeze. I replied with the voice I had trained. It was like using a tool I knew very well. I remember one day, during a group presentation, my friend was nervous. She asked me to take the lead. I said, "Sure, I'll start." I stood in front of the class and spoke clearly, slowly, with all the American tones I had practiced alone. When I finished, people clapped. One girl said, "You speak like a native." I smiled and said, "Thanks." I talk to myself a lot. We laughed, but it was true. By that time, I had also created a little routine. In the morning, I'd say 3 things I was thankful for. In English. After school, I'd tell myself 3 things I learned. In English. And at night, I'd tell myself what I hoped for the next day. Also in English. These small talks became like a journal, but spoken out loud. I even gave myself names in these imaginary scenes. Sometimes I'd pretend to be a tour guide. Welcome, everyone. Today we're visiting the famous Central Park in New York City. Other times, I was a storyteller. Once upon a time, in a small town, lived a girl who loved languages. Each role gave me a new way to practice. It wasn't just about what I was saying. It was about the feeling. When I talked to myself with an American voice, I wasn't just copying sounds. I was becoming part of the culture, the emotion, the rhythm of the language. I was building fluency not with rules, but with daily life. And the best part? I was never bored. Talking to myself was always different. I could talk about school, weather, music, dreams, food, feelings, anything. I didn't need a textbook. I just needed time, space, and curiosity. Looking back now, I truly believe this step was one of the most powerful. Because once you begin to speak to yourself with confidence, with rhythm, with love, there's nothing stopping you. You no longer wait for the perfect moment or the perfect partner. You become your own guide, your own coach, your own speaker. And with this habit growing stronger every day, I realized something even deeper was happening. I was not only talking to myself in English, I was thinking in English. I was feeling in English. And soon I would begin living my days, fully and naturally, with the American accent I had always dreamed of. But before that happened, there was one more powerful step I took. 5. I surrounded myself with the accent. All day talking to myself in English had changed me deeply. My mouth moved differently. My ears listened more sharply. My thoughts danced in American rhythm. I was no longer just learning English. I was living it, quietly, personally, but completely. Still, something inside me whispered that I could go even further. I had made my voice sound American. But what if I could make my whole world sound American? That idea stayed with me. It followed me like a shadow through every hallway at school, every walk home, every quiet moment in my room. It was simple, yet powerful. What if I surrounded myself with the accent all day long? What if English didn't just come in little moments, like class time or homework, but filled every corner of my life, from morning to night? I started small, the way I always did. I changed my phone language to English. It was a little thing, but it made me think more in English every time I opened an app or read a message. At first, I struggled with some words. I didn't know what settings or notifications meant. But I didn't switch back. I took a breath, guessed the meaning, and slowly, I learned. Then I changed the voice on my phone's virtual assistant. I picked a soft American female voice. It sounded calm and clear. Every time I asked her something, "What's the weather today?" or "Set a timer for 10 minutes," she answered in perfect American rhythm. I repeated her voice. I mimicked her tone. It felt like I had a tiny teacher living inside my phone. Music became my next teacher. I stopped listening to songs in my native language for a while. I filled my playlist with American songs, slow ones, clear ones, full of feeling and story. I chose artists who sang like they were talking. Norah Jones, John Mayer, Taylor Swift. I didn't just listen. I sang along, in the bathroom, on the bus, while doing my homework. I whispered the words softly, matching the flow, the melody, the sounds. I let the rhythm enter my bones. At first, I didn't understand every lyric, but I let the music wash over me. I caught pieces, a phrase here, a chorus there. I looked up lyrics and sang them again and again until they were part of me. Sometimes I cried when the words touched my heart. Other times I danced around my room like a happy child. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to feel English. Then came podcasts. At night, I started listening to short American podcasts for beginners. I found ones where people spoke clearly and naturally, slow, but not robotic. Some were about daily life, some about simple stories. I listened before bed. I closed my eyes and imagined I was walking in a small town in America, hearing people talk. I copied their expressions. I paused and repeated. I let my ears guide my tongue. As days passed, I stopped limiting myself to learning tools. I realized something powerful. Everything in English could teach me. I didn't need only textbooks or language videos. Real life, in real English, was all around me if I chose to let it in. So I started watching American YouTubers. Not English teachers, just regular people. Vloggers who shared their daily lives. A girl making breakfast in her small apartment in Chicago. A boy doing day-in-my-life videos in Los Angeles. I watched how they moved, how they talked, what expressions they used. They were casual, natural, funny. I wasn't just learning English. I was learning culture, intonation, emotion. I turned on the subtitles at first, but soon, I challenged myself to turn them off. I paused and rewound when I didn't understand. I repeated what they said. If a vlogger said, "I'm gonna grab a coffee real quick," I said it too, copying every beat. Not just the words, but the feel. Soon, those phrases became mine. TV shows became my next classroom. I chose shows with simple dialogue and strong American voices, like Friends or The Office. I didn't binge watch them like before. I studied them. I chose one episode and watched it 10 times. First with subtitles, then without. Then again, mimicking the characters. Sometimes I paused the show, looked in the mirror, and acted out the scene myself. I'd say lines like, "Could you be any more dramatic?" or "No way, that's crazy," using their exact voice. My family thought I was being silly, but I was serious. I was training. I was building a world around me that was full of the American accent. Even food became part of my journey. When I cooked or helped in the kitchen, I used English. I'd read American recipes online. I watched cooking videos by American chefs. I learned how they said sugar, olive oil, tablespoon, and even preheat the oven. I whispered the steps to myself as I followed them. My cooking wasn't just for eating, it was for speaking. I also changed what I read. Instead of books in my language, I started with children's books in English. Simple, clear sentences. I read them out loud, slowly, using my American voice. I didn't rush. I tasted every word. Then I moved to short stories, then blog posts. I found websites where people shared diary entries or opinions on life. I read them daily, always out loud, always acting the part. And guess what? My thinking changed again. Not only was I speaking more English, but now I was thinking in the accent. My inner voice started sounding American. I didn't just say, "I'm hungry." I heard it in my mind like an American speaker would say it. The tone, the rhythm, the relaxed drop at the end of the sentence. It was all there. School became easier too. When a teacher said something in English, I didn't need to translate anymore. My brain responded in English. When I wrote essays, I stopped translating thoughts from my language. I just wrote. My mind had begun living in English all day. And the biggest shift came when I stopped waiting for English time. English wasn't a subject for me anymore. It was a place I lived in from morning to night. I surrounded myself with it like warm sunlight. It was in my room, my phone, my music, my kitchen, my mind. Even my dreams changed. I had more dreams in English than ever before. Some were short, some were long, but all of them felt natural. And when I woke up, I smiled. My subconscious was practicing too. Of course, I still had hard days. Some phrases confused me. Some accents were too fast. Sometimes I felt tired, but I never gave up. Because I had made English my home. And when you live in a home, you don't run away when it rains. You stay, you clean, you fix, you grow. One afternoon, I sat in the garden with my headphones on. I was listening to a podcast about a woman who moved to America and learned English from zero. Her voice was strong and smooth. She said, "I didn't just learn English. I let English live with me." I paused the podcast. Her words echoed in my heart. That was exactly what I had done. I let the accent live with me. I gave it space in my thoughts. I gave it time in my day. I invited it into my music, my shows, my talks with myself. And in return, it gave me fluency, not just in speaking, but in feeling. Now, even when I walk in silence, English is walking with me. When I eat, sleep, study, laugh, it's there. Not as a guest, but as part of my life. A language, yes. But also a voice, a melody, a rhythm that now belongs to me. And with every passing day, I feel more comfortable, more natural, more myself in this new voice. Because I don't just use it, I live in it. But this was not the end of my journey. I still had one more thing to share, one more secret that brought everything together.